Underneath St. Peter's Basilica, below the main altar, is a crypt of marble that houses the tombs of 149 popes. And they're sort of laid out along these two corridors. But there in the middle of these men was a space that I sat uncomfortably on the hard surface of a wooden bench, vested similar to now as I was for Mass. And I was staring down the dimly lit aisle at the very purpose of this catacomb of kings. That is to say, the tomb of St. Peter himself, the apostle, and also the first pope. Given that it was the opening of a new conclave and we as priests of the Archdiocese of Philadelphia were gathered there that early morning to pray for the next pope-elect, whomever it would be, the weight of that occasion for all of us was obvious. But the question that sat in my heart as I gazed at that tomb was simple. What does it really mean, all of this? I heard reporters asking the same question to countless passersby in St. Peter's Square, which is about 100 feet above our heads, but always asked with the same narrow entry point. What does it mean politically? Will the church going forward, in your eyes, be more conservative or more liberal? Because that's how the world really views the church. The world reduces the church to just another political organization of man that exercises control with a global reach. And therefore, they're missing the momentum of the occasion. In fact, it wasn't until Jason Martinez of Fox 29, who's a parishioner here at Annunciation, that I heard the right question asked. He said, why should not only Catholics, but even non-Catholics care about who steps out on that balcony? In other words, what does this occasion really mean, not just politically, but ultimately for everybody? And underneath all the activity that was going on, not far below from the chatter and the buzz, resting there in the darkness, I heard the bones of Peter answer with one word: remember. Remember that Peter was there when Jesus presented himself as the good shepherd, which today's gospel and today's feast captures. Our Lord said, "My sheep hear my voice, I know them, and they follow me." Remember that Peter was first a sheep. He heard the voice of Jesus calling him to leave his boats and to follow him. And like a good sheep, Peter followed him everywhere the shepherd went, over grassy hills, temple courtyards, and countless dinner tables, listening to the gospel as it was proclaimed, taking it into his heart and allowing it to transform him from the inside. And then when, after all-night fishing ventures ended in failure and Jesus came and filled his nets, when, after Peter denied Jesus at the hour of our Lord's greatest need on Holy Thursday, but the Lord still appeared in the upper room and offered him peace, Peter felt known by the shepherd, like personally known. But something happened when this good shepherd, who so powerfully touched Peter's life, took him and sat him by a charcoal fire, and then asked him to do the same thing now for other people. Peter, do you love me? Feed my sheep. Tend my lambs. Be the good shepherd, because I'm leaving. And he did. And the first half of the book of Acts recounts all the ways that Peter committed himself to this task. And as I sat there in that catacombs, I'm thinking about this. All the fruit of Peter's ministry We heard some of that in John's revelation from today's second reading. John describes God's people as those who survived the time of great distress. And I could hear Peter saying, remember the sacrifices that I made to address every controversy of my time, both inside and outside of the church, to keep Christ's flock safely on the narrow path. And when survive meant needing to give up this earthly life to preserve life for eternity, as the vicar of the Good Shepherd, remember that I showed them how to do that by first laying down my life on the cross. John describes the flock as a great multitude which no one could count, from every nation, race, people, and tongue. Remember the throngs of people that Peter preached the gospel to, that he himself had first received, and how countless people of different languages gathered and heard him speaking in their own tongue, converted and were saved. These are the ones who, quote, washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. They did this by the sacraments made available to them in the church, of which Peter was the chief steward. Remember these things. What meaning does all of this have? Why should any of us care? Because the Pope is God's gift to all of us. That once again, Jesus would take one from among his own sheep to call him now to stand forward and serve as the Good Shepherd, to be the visible sign in our times of God's love, guidance, and concern during this period of our own great distress, so that we might tread safely this narrow path to life and know with confidence and obey with courage the voice of God in our times. And now we know this task falls to Leo XIV, whom you receive this day as God's personal gift to you.